Hello, everybody. Happy fall. Today's the first day of fall, 2017, September 22nd. And it has been 2 weeks, and it is time for another update of the Disneyland Magical Audio Tour. I hope everybody has been having a pleasant end of the summer, and now the weather's going to get a little more nippy, but I love the fall. Halloween is near. And then Christmas. This is really my favorite time of year. So, before I get on to the Magical Audio Tour, which, even though I haven't added a lot of new content since my last update, in fact, I haven't added any new content since my last update, I have been doing a lot of work getting things ready to be added, and I have made even more changes to the tracks that I will be adding, and I will explain all of that to you. But first, I want to give you a little bit of advertising for myself. I am on Patreon, and it's patreon.com/DisneyChris. I have 10 patrons. I make $56 a month from my patrons. And I would like to make more because that's really not enough to pay for the money that I put into editing my site. And I spend about 10 hours a day working on it. And it's all for free. There's no charge to go onto the site and listen to anything for as long as you want, anytime you want, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. 366 if it's a leap year. But all you have to do to become a patron is come to this page. You click on Become a Patron, and it takes you to this page. You type in the amount you want to pledge per month. You can do as low as $1. Every little bit helps. Don't feel like you have to donate any more than $1. If 10 people donate $1, that's another $10 a month for me, and that's wonderful. So if all you can spare is $1 a month, think of what you're getting for $1 a month. I have 1,400 audio tracks, and I'm adding probably that same amount when all is said and done. The site is going to have about 3,000 audio tracks devoted to the original Disneyland. All the work I put in for you, and I would really appreciate it if people watching this video can do a monthly recurring donation to my Patreon account, because the more content I add, the more expensive it gets, because I have to pay my web host more money to host the amount of memory that is taken up by the content. And I'll show you, for example, right now I have set up and ready for final editing in this folder marked Current Project. I have 55 items, and these have not been added to the site yet. They're ready to be edited. They're all set up and ready for final inspection, basically. If I show you how much time these run total, 41 hours of music right there alone it's ready to be added to the site. Well, every little bit of memory I take up costs me money. So if you want me to be able to keep adding new content to the site, I need your support and your help. I know a lot of people enjoy the site, visit the site, take advantage of the site. It's all for free. But if you are able to make even a small monthly recurring donation, it would really be appreciated. And there are rewards that I give my patrons. I provide them with special exclusive audio content every month, sometimes more than once a month, that you cannot get on my site. It's exclusive to my patrons, so there's an advantage there for you too. So if you want to get that exclusive content, then just let me know by making a monthly donation. If you don't want to do the monthly donation, that's okay too. If you want to just make a one-time donation in any amount, you can do so by going to my website and on the home page you'll find this where is it? Oh, it's down at the very bottom of my home page. You can click on donate and it'll take you to my PayPal account, and you can just make any donation. It'll be deducted from your PayPal. You can click on make it a monthly donation, but I don't see why you would do that, because if you're going to do that, you might as well do it through Patreon. But you can just donate any one-time amount and click on donate. It's that easy, and it goes right into my PayPal account. And that's really helpful too. So if you're not comfortable doing the monthly deduction thing and you just want to make a one-time donation, and I do try to keep track of people who do make one-time donations, and I try to include them in the special added audio content that I also give to my Patreon people. So if you do make a one-time donation, I try to remember those names and get you that content as well. So I want everyone to be included. So there's my sales pitch for today. And I don't include that in every video, but I thought that it's been a while since I've mentioned it, so I would just bring it up real quickly and then move on to what you really came to see. So since my last update, again, I found all of these flyers and I keep coming across more and more information about different performers who have been featured in the park. And one of the main things that I stumbled across was this particular flyer right here. Country Music Spectacular. Now I'm like, oh no, what is this now? Because before I was including the Country Music Jubilee, which was a weekly concert series held during peak seasons starting in 1966 and lasting up until the 80s. And I had, I had a lot of names of artists who appeared at that event in its early years from 1966 up to the early 70s. So that was what I was using to represent country music in Disneyland. But then I came across this thing called Spectacular with all of these artists that were not in, that I didn't have included in the Country Music Jubilee. And I figured out what this is, this Country Music Spectacular. This was an after-hours, once-a-year special event that was sort of like the Dixieland and Disneyland thing, where they brought in a bunch of special artists who performed in a special big concert, and then throughout the evening they also appeared throughout the whole park. And it only lasted one night, and it was only once a year. And from the information I could find, it started in 1971 and ran every September up until 1974 or 5, I'm guessing. It got a little sketchy. I know for sure it was 71, 72, and 73, and 74. It might have gone a year or maybe two after that. And it's interesting because the last year of the Dixieland and Disneyland Festival was 1971. So this sort of took over from that tradition of having that yearly concert where they close the park early, and it's an extra ticket, and it includes all attractions. It's kind of the precursor to the Unlimited Passport, which came along in 1982. These special events had the Unlimited Passport feature even before that. For you pay a special price, you get all this entertainment, Plus, you'd have unlimited access to the attractions without extra tickets for the attractions. So, that being said, these are all the artists that appeared in the 1972 Country Music Spectacular. And I had to do some digging to figure that out because there's no date on here. It just says Saturday night, September 23rd. But hey, it wasn't September 23rd every year on a Saturday, so I used my deductive reasoning and looked at calendars from the 70s and figured out that 1972 was the year where September 23rd fell on a Saturday, and that's how I figured out what year this was. Then I did more digging, and I found some articles for the 1971 version and the 1973 version, and I got even more names of more country artists. So now I had a new problem. How do I represent all of those country stars? Because right now all I had was one track to represent the country music Jubilee, which I still have on my site right now. So the Country Music Jubilee is about an hour and 15-minute long medley that included a lot of the early years, the 66 to like 72-ish stars that appeared in the park for that ongoing weekly concert series. I don't know what's going on with this page. Oh, there it goes. Okay. It was doing something funny for a second there. So I did have that represented. It's still on my site right now. This is going to change though. But so what I did was, my computer's being weird. Look at this. All right. So what I did was I decided to add another section. I don't know what's going on with my web with Firefox, but all of a sudden now you have to click on these little bars. If you right click on them and hit activate this plugin, allow and remember, it turns them on. It just started doing that a couple days ago. So if you're having a problem with Firefox, that's how you fix it. Right click on the bar, hit allow this plugin, and then you'll get them. You'll be able to play them. I am going to be changing the method that you play the music in early 2018. In January, I'm going to start working on that so that it'll no longer be a flash player driven system. It'll use HTML, which means that it'll be a lot less difficult, and you'll pretty much be able to listen to the music on any type of web. I forget what like Firefox, Google. If you still use Internet Explorer, if you use Safari, you'll be able to have easy access to all the music. It won't be an issue anymore. And also, I believe when I do this, you'll be able to access it on any mobile device at all. So that being said, I digress. Moving on to what I did with the country music, and I'm going to kind of backtrack after I discuss that because there's some other changes. I added a new section. So the Legends of Country in Disneyland is the new section, and I've divided it up as such. The Country Music Jubilee is still going to have its own track, and it's going to be very similar to what I already had, but I'm going to make a few additions to it because I found out names of a few additional artists who appeared at these concerts, and I'm going to add them to it. Then I'm splitting up the Country Music Spectacular into two sections, the 1971 and the 1972. I'm not going any further beyond that because anything that's post-72 is going down here in this track, which is more Legends of Country in Disneyland, which is basically everybody who came after those initial first years of the Jubilee and the first 2 years of the Spectacular. So this includes, everything that happened after that, pretty much through the 70s. The country music thing started to dissipate in Disneyland by the 80s. They still had people performing, but they were a lot of repeat performers who had already appeared in the park throughout the 70s. And it wasn't as big of a deal, and its popularity started to die off. So I don't go into the 80s. And to be honest, I don't like country music past the 70s. That's kind of my cutoff for my tolerance of country music. By the 80s, I start having great distaste for country music. I'm not a big fan, but I do enjoy classic country from the 70s, the 60s, the 50s. So I do like the music I will be including. So if you're not a fan of present day country music, don't be thrown off by this and afraid to listen to this music, because it really is really great music. And if you like the Country Bear Jamboree, a lot of the music is that type of thing. It's not quite what you hear in today's modern country, which is something I'm not a fan of. And I know a lot of other people aren't too. I know there are a lot of people who are, and I don't wish to offend, but I'm just not a fan personally. It's okay if you are, though. Danny Davis and the Nashville Brass I had mentioned last update, and I am giving him his very own track as part of this whole country music section that I have just added within the past few days. And now I've been working on gathering all the music for that, and I'll show you. I made a document here where I'm organizing all the names of this is the current medley as it stands now, this right here. These ones in red I'm moving to another place because I had originally included them in this Jubilee, but I don't have any record of them. I know they appeared at Disneyland, but I don't think they appeared at the Jubilee, so they're going down to the more Legends of Country medley instead. So that's why I put them in red. And so I've divided all of these names up by what year they appeared at the country music. The CMJ is Country Music Jubilee. And then I do Country Music Spectacular. These are all the artists. And then I did 71 and 72, and then these are all the others right here. So any ones that are highlighted, I've already collected the audio for. The ones that are in yellow here are ones that I already have in the original medley. The ones that are in pink are ones that I have the music, I've gathered it, but they weren't in the original medley and I need to add them to it. The ones that are in this dark olive green, I could not find any music for them. So there's 3 from 1966, I could not find any music, so they're not being included. Same with this Aunt Dinah's Quilting Party. There's actually apparently a song called Aunt Dinah's Quilting Party, but I could not find a group called Aunt Dinah's Quilting Party, just the song performed by other groups. So I've gotten everything gathered together as far as music and artists up to the Country Music Jubilee. So everybody involved in the Country Music Jubilee, I've already found the audio for. I still need to set it up, though. I have not set up the new version. And then for the Spectacular, all the ones in blue down here, I have. So I have quite a few, but the ones in black, I still need to find. And that's what I'm going to do today after I'm done recording this. So hopefully by the end of the day, I will have all the audio that I need for this, and I will be able to put together these new medleys. Now the version that I'm going to have on this page is going to be split up as I showed you. Then what I'm going to do is go back to this version on my After Dark page, and it's going to be a best of. So I'm going to take the most famous singers and famous songs from all of this, and just take like the best of the best and put it all together in one hour medley, and that will go on this page. So that's how this is going to be represented. So what's there now is definitely going to change. Some of the songs will be the same, but there'll be a lot of different ones. And let me show you how I'm organizing all of that country music. I have it all in this folder here. And see, Jubilee 1966. Here's all the music that I've gathered for that. All right here. I labeled everything so I know how to find it. Here's 1967 and 1972 Country Music Jubilee. Here's all the music that I gathered for that. These are all MP3 files. All the other, the further Jubilees beyond 72 right here. And so forth and so on. The spectacular, more legends of country. That's how I'm organizing all the files. I will be continuing this today. So, basically, the only thing I have left to set up right now, as far as the chapter, as far as these two chapters, every single track has been pre-edited and is ready for final editing, and that's what this is. There's 55 tracks currently for chapters 20 and 21, all in this folder, ready for me to go in and do the final editing on. That's one of the main things I've been working on, is getting all these things set up, getting all the music together. All the Roland River Review stuff I talked about in the last episode, it's all ready for final editing. I have all the music gathered and together. It's ready to go. So even though I haven't added any content, I've been very busy. Here's this document shows all of the medleys that I have made with all of the new things I'm adding. For example, what I talked about last week, 2 weeks ago, the Space Age Disco Concert. I've set all that up, and I have all of the names of the songs here and all of the artists, and the whole thing is ready for final editing, and I have a whole list here. And once the medley is posted to the website, I will provide this list of songs to Melanie, who does the corresponding show notes for these vlogs. I will provide her with these lists, and she will include them in the notes that go along with the vlog updates. She'll include them, so you'll be able to look at the lists too. I'm not going to have her post these lists until the songs have been added to the site, and they haven't been added yet, so that's what this is. I'm keeping track of the names and names of the artists and the songs that I'm adding to all these medleys. So as you can see here, I've done a lot of work on this too. So that's that. And I like to keep a clean desktop. So now let's look at the actual site real quick. And I'll go through a few other minor changes I've made other than those major ones I just showed you. First of all, I'll just quickly scroll through and see. I don't even remember everything I've changed, but if I look at the page as I go through, I'll remember along with you anything that I've made different. Oh, here's one thing. The Wonderful World of Color Disneyland After Dark. This is something that I've going to be adding to the site, which is going to basically be most of the entire 45-minute special, with a few things taken out and sort of edited together a little bit nicer, so it transitions from one scene to the next a little bit more smoothly than the original editing was, because we don't have commercials. And one thing I was not going to include was the whole Tahitian Terrace section, because I already had a lot of that audio included in my Tahitian Terrace section track down here. But what I decided to do was go ahead and include the whole Tahitian Terrace segment in the Wonderful World of Color, and instead I'm going to redo this track so that it doesn't include the same audio that the Wonderful World of Color does. But never fear, because this is an exact duplicate of a track that's already on my Adventureland page, so you'll still have access to the original version. I'm just going to redo the version for Disneyland After Dark so that it includes different audio, so you're not listening to the same audio twice on the same page. That's one thing I'm working on. I've already set that up, and that's ready to go. Let's see. I'm adding a few new songs to the Humdinger, because I came across a few new artists, so I'm redoing that. It's going to be pretty much the same as it is now, with 1 or 2 or 3 extra songs added to it. Same thing with Potpourri. I came across 1 extra artist, and I'm adding that 1 extra artist to this group, so that's going to be changed too. I already talked about Country Music Jubilee. Great American Music Machine. I found a bunch of new artists that I'm going to be adding to this. And I also took out any music that had kind of a disco vibe to it, because I'm going to include it in my new Space Stage Disco Concert track. So I took out anything that was overly disco sounding from this medley, and that's going to be moved to that. And then I added in some new artists that I came across that I did not know when I originally made this mix that had performed in the park. And I wanted to include them because they're pretty well known, and they had songs that were, you know, big hits, so I wanted to include those and not leave those out. Scrolling down to I'm redoing Papa Do Run Run, which I originally didn't plan on, but I came across a lot more music by them, so I'm doing an extended mix. So instead of running just under 20 minutes, it's going to run about twice that. It's going to be about 20 minutes long, so that's ready to be added as soon as I do the final editing. Space Age Disco Concert, like I said, I moved some of the tracks from the Great American Music Machine to this. I also came across a few other artists that I didn't know had performed. For example, Mecco is a famous disco group that did the disco cover version of the Star Wars theme. And I was really happy to find out that they played in the park, because it really has something that I think really reminds me of Disneyland's Tomorrowland in the 70s. It has just that certain quality to it. So I'm happy to be able to include it in this medley now. Last time I mentioned that I wasn't sure whether or not I was going to combine the Bear Country Hoedown with the Nashville Brass because of the difference in sound. Well, I did a little editing magic, and I got it to the sound quality to kind of match well together, and I actually made a medley of Nashville Brass songs that I'm really happy with how it came out. So that's going to be added. So the decision that I made there, which I had mentioned in my last video, I decided to keep it as one track and not divide it, and it came out pretty nice. This hasn't changed other than the fact that I have it set up and ready for final editing now. This all has pretty much stayed the same since my last update. Right. Yeah, none of these things have changed. So that's Chapter 20, Disneyland After Dark. Now let's look at Chapter 21, and in addition to this country music section that I added, let me go through a few other things that I've changed since my last update. I don't know what's going on with my screen here. There it goes. Okay, I don't know what that was all about. That doesn't happen usually. Okay, so this is all the same, except I am going to be adding a new track to this, because originally I was only including instrumentals, but there are a lot of famous singers who played in the parks during these years who sang along with these big bands that played. So I'm including a bunch of famous singers that performed in the park during that period. For example, Frank Sinatra Jr., who's pictured here singing at the Plaza Gardens. He's represented in the track. Patty Page, Mel Torme, people like that are being represented in this, and it's really nice. I can't wait to add it. It's ready to go. In fact, I don't need to keep saying it's ready to go for final editing, because the only things that are not ready for final editing yet are the country music things, which I talked about earlier. Everything else is ready, without exception, because I've been working busy to get that done. This is all the same. I found a better picture for this. Only the picture has changed. Constantly tweaking, constantly improving. I've already gone over all of this. Tomorrowland After Dark, I made a few slight changes. I moved things around a little bit. I took things out and put them in another section. I'm going to include the Space Age Disco concert on this chapter also, which is going to be exactly the same as the version on Chapter 20 After Dark. It's going to be the same track with 2 songs taken out, because this track is going to now be, and I was calling this group Voyager. I need to correct that. The name of this group is Voyage, not Voyager. That's important to point out. But I'm going to make a mix of Voyage and Mecco, who did the Star Wars theme. They both have a similar quality. They're not singer oriented, they're instrumental oriented, and they have kind of the same vibe, and they both performed at the park, and I just want to kind of include them as one little mix together. So this is there for now as just Voyage, but it's going to be extended with music by Mecco also. So the 2 songs that are the one song by Voyage and the one song by Mecco that is going to be part of this mix on Chapter 20 are being taken out for the version on this chapter, because instead of listening to them here, you're going to be listening to those groups down here. So I didn't want to repeat the same songs. So that's a slight difference between the 2 versions on each chapter. I know it's like bizarre, but just an update on all this. It's all done. Again, I'm telling you what I just said I wasn't going to tell you, but it's all ready to go. All the music's gathered and ready to be edited. So this has changed because the last time I talked to you, I had some little extra bands after Buddy Rich. I decided to split this up because I want to keep all of the bands in this section exclusively the bands that were on the Disney Channel television special, Big Bands in Disneyland. And all of this music is going to be the music, the actual audio from those television programs. So I'm keeping all this as one section, and then I added a new section called More Legends of Jazz in Disneyland, and that's where I'm putting all of the extra things. And I added a few more. I decided to give a few of the others more of a focus, so I added a few extras, and those would be, this one here is going to be representing a lot of the bands that just performed in the park once, maybe twice, but they're big names. Like I mentioned in the last video, Xavier Cugat would be one of them, who's a famous band leader from that era. And because he played in the park, he should be represented, but he doesn't need his a half-hour mix, because he appeared in the park one time only. So those type of bands are just getting a mix together at the beginning of the section. And then the other bands appeared in the park multiple times and were a little bit more significant to the history of Disneyland than the ones that would be included in this overall mix. And so the ones that I'm representing with their own separate mix would be Freddie Martin, who, although he didn't appear in the park until 1976, following 1976, he was a constant mainstay of the park throughout the 70s and into the 80s. He appeared multiple times. He was highly featured, so he really should get his own mix. He also has a Disney connection in that from his band came the song Bumble Boogie, which was turned into a Disney animation segment from Make Mine Music, Or is it Medley Time? Medley Time. That one's in Medley Time. Louis Bellson. Again, these are all like big name players that played multiple times in the park. Originally, I had Mickey Finns as part of the Tomorrowland After Dark section because they did perform in Tomorrowland, but because this section is just about jazz performers and not necessarily about Carnation Plaza Gardens specifically, I can include any jazz performers in this section, whether or not they performed at the Plaza Gardens. So that's why I'm able to now squeeze them into here, which is a little bit more appropriate, because rather than putting them with a bunch of rock and roll type music where they kind of stand out in a strange way, they fit in a little bit more here. So Myron Florin was actually the accordionist with the Lawrence Welk Orchestra, and after Lawrence Welk died, he formed his own band, and he performed in Disneyland several times in the mid to late 80s, so I thought I would include him. Horace Heidt Jr., his father was a famous band leader, and then he took over and made his own band, and he appeared in the park many times in the late 80s. And he was kind of like the last of the big band, the real big band performers before, even though he was the son of the original leader. After that, it kind of shifted more towards local big band orchestras rather than famous, nationally famous. So that's why I kind of separate the two, because by the 90s, they were getting, local, like Red and the Red Hots. They're not famous worldwide. They're more of a local Orange County band that would play at Disneyland. They are represented, but in a separate section. This section is not anything new, but to keep things consistent, if you'll notice, everything on this chapter is set up in such a way that it's in a section, with the only exception of the first two songs. Everything else after that is like, it has an introduction and it has all these red boxes that are part of that category. Then another introduction, and then all these red boxes that are part of that category. And again and again and again and again. And it's consistently doing that throughout the whole page. So rather than what I originally had was have these just appear like these do up at the top. They were their own thing. They weren't part of a category. I decided to keep things consistent and arrange all of these into a category. So I'm calling this, even though all this music is exactly what was there before, now I made a little grouping of it together because it all kind of fits into the category of totally 80s. Because this is all 80s performers and groups that were going on in the 80s, obviously. So I found this cute little image of Videopolis, and I made a whole new section, but nothing other than that has changed. And everything after that, scrolling down, is what I just mentioned, the local bands that play in the park now. They're not world famous, like Benny Goodman's not there anymore, obviously. And then Tomorrowland Terrace, and that's the end. All this from track number 78 going down, nothing has changed. So that's what I've been doing for the past 2 weeks. Today's going to be a big day because I'm finally going to be done with all of the gathering of the music together and putting everything into medleys and arranging everything, because all I have left to do is that country music stuff that I showed you. Once that's done, I will finally be able to get back to final editing, and I will be able to be adding brand new tracks to the site little by little, because all of the preparation that I've been doing for the past month is all going to start paying off, and you're going to see a lot of new audio very rapidly be added to the site, probably starting the beginning of next week. I do have to edit my podcast and do a few other things that might slow that process down slightly, but once all that's done, the rate of which new audio will be added to the site is going to increase dramatically. Originally, I had hoped that I would have all of this done in time for my birthday, I'd have chapter 20. This was back when it was just one chapter. And I would have had it done by my birthday if I hadn't decided to go crazy and add all this new stuff. So my birthday's in just a few days. I don't think I'm going to make the deadline. However, wherever I am on this project by Thanksgiving Day, I am going to drop what I'm doing and move on to editing Christmas stuff for the rest of the year. So if this is not done by Thanksgiving, and it may not be, it will be put on hold. I will be doing the Christmas content from Thanksgiving till Christmas, and then I will be working on replacing the audio player, which I mentioned earlier in the video. I'm going to come up with a new system for playing the audio, which is better. That's going to happen after the Christmas stuff is done, and then once that's done, I will go back to finishing up this chapter, and then I'm not sure where I will go after that. That's still being debated. If you have any chapters that you would like me to work on after all that's done, let me know, and I will consider working on that chapter next. I'm open for suggestions. So anyway, happy fall, everybody. And I will talk to you in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.